Hi. Charles has had about Hermes, So anyway, well, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to do a 20-minute session on the book about called revisioning psychology, and then we'll have questions. And then I'll do another 15-minute session. And at that point, it's just can be open up. And by the way, hi, Kevin and Lewis. And I don't know if Roy's still here. And Jan is here. Hi. I will try to watch the chat this time too. I'm sort of, always missing that. I say I'm going to do it and then I don't do it. See if I can find it here where the chat is. Oh, wait, here's got some other people here. Rena is here from Bangalore, and Marina is here from the UK. So great. All right. Hey, Marina. And Rena's, I think, joining.
Hi, all.
Hi. Oh, there's Rena, too. Okay, so, well, I'm just going to do 20 minutes on this is a very important book, by the way. I think, the whole focus is, I think, at least, we don't have to have this be our focus all the time. But the focus that I had initially was that we read works that can help us if we're doing inner work, okay? So this book, and I think Gary agreed with me that it does really feed our inner work. I mean, it's on personifying images, okay? And why it's important and what happens when you don't do it, and also I think it's very interesting that he says that as far as in the West is concerned, even as rich as the Eastern tradition is and the Native American tradition is, and some of the New Age things and everything, that European man comes from an ancient tradition of the daemons, many forces within us have their own personality, and Jung even says that there's no reason to think that they didn't have the personality before they came to you, like Mars or Saturn or Luna, or other deities, but there's also can be some on other topics. But anyway, I'm just going to go through this. I don't know how far we'll get, but I don't think we have to go too fast through it. But then we'll open up to questions. So I'll just do, let's see, about until say 23 after. Okay. Well, anyway, the book is called Revisioning Psychology, and it is it's really about a world that's been desouled and depersonalized, and trying to recover that, in our lives, because it makes such a desiccation that we live to some extent without what in the deep past was termed soul. Now, it's not the same soul that we think of today, but he's thinking more of the soul that was embodied in Greek, the Greek tradition. So he's going to describe what soul is, and in chapter 3, he's going to do a description about soul and spirit, which is very important, I think, too. But anyway, it's got 4 chapters. The one we'll do today, and I don't think we'll get through the whole thing because it's 51 pages, but, it's so dense, okay? But it's on personifying or imagining things. The second chapter is called on pathologizing or falling apart. And this is the one on soul versus spirit. It's not the third one, But the idea of the pathologizing is that Jung said that when we don't have um, altars for all these archetypal energies within us and all these complexes within us, they show up in our lives as diseases, neuroses. Sorry. Yeah. Just a second. I'm just 1 second here. I'm gonna Okay. I told him to shut up. Okay. Anyway, so then the pathologizing, so is saying that the archetypes are something that needs to be personified within us. And he's going to go through it. And of course, now he's leaping back into the Greek tradition. And then the third chapter is on psychologizing or seeing through. And the whole idea is that by personalizing, soul turns events into experiences. It adds a element of numinous emotion to an event, which then makes it adds either symbolic or metaphorical meaning. Okay, and then the fourth chapter is on dehumanizing or soul making. Now, when he talks about dehumanizing, it's not depersonalizing, dehumanizing. There used to, I think Tim's, and maybe Adam has heard of Robinson Jeffers, who's the poet of Carmel from Big Sur, and he was called the anti-humanist poet because he would write poetry based on the fact that he thought that ego consciousness was, that the civilization took a wrong turn when it started to write its history in prose instead of poetry, And so, in other words, this became the ascendancy of the prosaic attitude, which became the literalist attitude, which then became what was the desouled attitude and the depersonalized attitude, where he, was. I've read his poetry. It's a little hard for me to get, but Joseph Campbell was really good friends with, or a big supporter of his. That's why I read it in the first place. But anyway, so the whole book is on soul making and the psychology of soul. And it's taking he wants to take the point of view of the soul. And he says, and he quotes Keats, which Gary put up there earlier, call the world, if you please, the veil of soul making. Then you find the use of the world and of existence really is soul making. And it's interesting that he uses the word the veil of soul making. The veil is a valley, and the valley, it's the valley of sorrows, the valley of veil of tears, veil of sorrow. It's the area where we're most human. And what they say, up on the heights, there's not much brooding done when you're on top of a mountain, but down in the valleys, there's a lot of brooding and incubating. And of course, brooding and incubating is soul making. This is the whole idea of active alchemy. Is you lend attention to an image and you cook it, and you lend attention to it by brooding or incubating on it. And like this image I had of going up this muddy hill and having the dog sink into the mud up to his head, and I can't pull him out. Well, I know that's a powerful image, but I don't know what it means yet. I have to do some active imaginations on it, and I have to brood it and incubate it, and cook it. And then eventually it becomes part of your personal myth. It becomes an icon on the stained glass windows of the temple of the house of wisdom that was built just for you, you know. So in other words, hopefully your temple of wisdom that's built on the rock of where you know, it's at the rock bottom where you can't go any lower. So its foundation is based on everything that you own being sloughed away. That's where the temple of the house of wisdom is built. That there's nothing, everything that you own, everything that you have has been taken away from you. That's the foundation of the house of wisdom, you know. And in that house of wisdom, the stained glass windows that you have in it should be filled with dream images that you had or things that you saw in your active imaginations. And the way you know, Jeffrey Raft says, is through relentless memory. You don't just have it, amplify it, and forget it. You need to try to assemble those in your dream as if you are someone who is someone who is a a bard, you know, a poetic bard, and you can tell the oral history of your you know, inner work, your inner life. And that's how you get the stained glass window filled with icons that you have. But anyway, so I'm just going to keep going on here and we'll keep an eye on the time. And you know, the human adventure is wandering through the veil of the world for the sake of making soul. You know, life is psychological. The purpose of life is to make psyche out of life, you know, to find connections between our lived life and the soul, you know. And of course, as Jung said, you know, images are psyche, and psyche is more than images, but it is communicated in images, you know. And he says soul is a perspective rather than a substance. Now we're going to get more into what soul is later, and I think the most beautiful representation of what soul is was I read it a couple of weeks ago by the Dalai Lama, you know, and he did a wonderful rendition of the difference between soul and spirit. But just for you know, this is kind of a dry definition. Soul is a perspective rather than a substance. It's a viewpoint rather than thing in itself. It's a perspective, a viewpoint. It's a reflective and mediates events and makes differences between ourself and everything that happens. So, I mean, the idea is if this is, you know, one of the advantages of ensouling or personifying events that happen, you know, where they say here, you know, it's life is, the purpose of life is to make psyche out of it, to find the connections between life and soul. Well, if you take the events of your life and you can do you can personify some of these events and make them and create distance from this window. And you're and you know, it often isn't, most of these experiences, if you read Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, that have a difference, you know, as Jung said about memories, Dreams, and Reflections, his biography, which is a very strange biography, you know, if you read it, because you're not going to find much about the historical Jung in it. You know, it's all about his inner work, you know. And he says as he got older, these images of his inner work, these stained glass windows in the Temple of House of Wisdom, became more vivid, and yet his life became less vivid. I mean, the events in his life, like people would ask him, you know, he knew all these famous people like William James, and people would ask him about all these people, and did he talk to them, and what did he say? And he says, I don't really remember that very well, you know. But you know, what he could remember were these inner events. But anyway, that is what they're saying, that the soul, and he's kind of, the reason I thought this was a better book than Anima, the the personified notion, is because then you get gender in it, and I don't want to go there. I mean, Anima is the one, the soul we're talking about, and this is something Hillman says, is that anima and animus, or the soul, are a daemon, you know, and so they are have a divine quality in them, and so it isn't gender. It's genderless. We both share the same amount of it, both genders. Yet in one gender, the anima, for instance, for a man is less conscious than it is for a woman. The woman has more of a feel for what anima is, but of the divine feminine, But the man has less consciousness of it, And it's the same thing for the animus. The man is more conscious of the divine nature of logos and spirit, because he's sort of a disconnected being. His feet are not on the earth. Where the woman, because she is more of the blessed greenness, that's one of the aspects of Hildegard of Bingen, talked about the blessed greenness, that this whiteness logos is a little less conscious. So that's what needs to become more conscious, and it will, like the inferior function, it contains, numinous power, because it is unconscious, Okay, and so it's the between us and events, the doer and the deed, there's this reflective moment, the mirror of soul making, this middle ground, this reflective moment. And I thought I would show you a dream I had one time that was sort of indicative of that one. It was, of the mediator between the doer and the deed is the soul, Yeah, here's the soul, the bridge that mediates, and it's so full of trees I can't get across it, you know. Uh, I mean, it's just this idea. I mean, I just thought dream when I was reading that this soul making is the middle ground. Now, it's also called polyvalent, so it means that that there's not just two positive and negative. There is many valencies, and the middle one between the inner and the outer world, and between the opposites. And this is the whole idea of the philosopher's stone, is polytheism, and this polyvalency is that the only way that you can unite the positive electric energy and the negative electric energy of any pair of opposites, and you don't have consciousness without two. There's no consciousness in one. I mean, because nothing exists, it's the black hole, is to have this third realm, this middle realm, which is the realm of soul. And that's what we're going to, the factor, it's the maker of images. It's independent of the events in which we are immersed, and yet it's part of us. So all these horrible events happen to us, and yet the soul is very calm, and it's at the still point. It's also very wild too. If you don't pay attention to it, it's very pagan, very you know it can he gives all the descriptions of it, where it's nymph, wise old woman, he gives all these muse, he gives like several aspects of it. it's intangible and undefined, yet it carries the highest importance, and it's identified with the principle of life and even of divinity. You know, it is an unknown component in our lives that makes meaning possible. So, and he always tries to contrast what would a desouled person be like, you know, that didn't have a soul. And it is a, now again, he's skipping over the he's speaking in terms of the Western pre-Christian tradition, which would include Greece primarily. I mean, this is where he's getting his images of these. It's the best analog he had for the archetypes, and the fact that the archetypes are all divinities is the only analog he could go to. Was the incredible, I mean, if you've ever read any Greek myths, it's just amazing how detailed these are about the energies within us. You know, I mean, some of these like Actaeon and Artemis, or you know, a lot of these myths are just so full of you know, they're like the most powerful dream you could possibly have. And where did they come from? You know, I mean, it's just amazing. So, and it refers to the deepening of an event, which could be a dream or or some kairos event, and turns it into experience. And it turns it into experience in terms of love and a religious attitude. And the religious attitude, Jung talks about what religion means, and it meant there was religio, which meant to connect two things together like a yoke, and like yoga is a yoke. But he thought it was more like religere, and that meant to give careful attention to, brood it and incubate it. You know, so the soul deepens events into experiencing using the method of both the concept of love and the concept of giving careful attention to brooding and incubating the images. And also, this is very interesting, through its special relationship with death. You know, the soul has a special relationship with death. And so that's its role as mediator, its role as the principle of life, its role as very close to a divinity, the fact that it is independent of the events in which we're immersed, and it deepens the events into experience, and it does it through the power of both love and through brooding and incubating. So when he says religion, that's what he means, you know, and through its special relationship with death. Okay. Well, anyway, I went about 20 minutes. Let's just get a little discussion. Then I'll do as soon as we're done with that, I'll do it in about 15 minutes, and then we'll open it up to anybody. And hi, everybody that I haven't said hi to. And Jordy, I see he's here. And hi, Jordy. Well, anybody have any comments? Gary, do you have comments?
Yeah, so, I mean, this book, I think this is maybe my favorite psychology book right now, you know. But I was going to throw this out to the group because, you know, originally this is like, well, how do we do Jung? And although Hellman, I guess, is really more about archetypal psychology. I mean, it certainly is, you know, something which can be practiced. And, you know, and I love the idea of personifying things. And it's like, you know, if we were alive during the Greek times, you know, with all the various gods and stuff they had, you know, I think it'd be easier to assign images to emotions. You know, like I struggle to assign an image to emotion. But I'll give you an example. Maybe someone can suggest something like, you know, right now I have this, you know, this one person in my life, and you know, we went through some stuff. I'm like, geez, what do I do? You know, do I continue? Do I try to work this out, or do I just kind of give up? And so, After reading what Jung had to say about the I Ching, I decided to, you know, throw the dice, so to speak, on the I Ching and see what it came up with. And I've tried it with a few other things, and I'm kind of blown away by the synchronicity. I mean, it makes no sense, but what this one came up with was conflict, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just so on, and yet I'm not exactly sure of, so I can brood on that, and it's like, and I have, and I'm like, so now I'm like, okay, I'm just going to wait this out. I'm going to try to be a container for this, but then I come up with this. Well, if I want to try, I'd like to come out of this book saying, okay, I know how to do this, and I'm practicing it. But to personify this and actually come up with an image, I'm a little bit stuck. And I think, that's partially because, we're from a monotheistic society. And so, I, for the images, I struggle with it. So I'd love to hear people's comments and suggestions.
I just make one quick one. We'll talk about it later, but one of the things that Jung says about, I mean, not Jung, but Hillman says about monotheism is that and what we lose by having all of these daemons is that there's only two capitalized words, and one is I, you, and the other one is God. And then he adds, and some say God is dead. So what state does that leave us in? And then he will make the case for personalization at the end of it, which is just beautiful. How he makes. But how about anybody else? Tim or Charles or Adam or Kevin or Jordy or Rena or anybody to speak up.
I have an experience of when I was awake, I had visions, and it turned out a very big event. So I had many experiences at different times, but this one is really salient because there is information about that event online too. So in 2001, I was living in India, and I was a student, and I lived on residence. I had some friends. A specific friend invited me to his parents' house for one of the weekends, for several weeks, but I was postponing it because I was very busy. So eventually, I said yes, and on 25th of January 2001, it was a day off. So he said that around such and such time in the afternoon, we will leave. His room was in the same building as mine, and he was going to come. So I had prepared myself, my little bag was prepared for a couple of nights visit to his parents' house for the first time. And I was in Gujarat. Now, just as a preparation, I should say next day, the biggest earthquake of probably 50 years in India happened in Gujarat. But as I was sitting, I got prepared and I sat down on my bed. And I was waiting for him. I didn't know when he will come. He can come after half an hour or 1 hour. So I didn't have anything to do. And then this vision started that was unusual for me. I usually don't have negative, I don't brood on negative events or negative thoughts, but I saw a lot of people being carried on stretchers, and there are like serums attached to their hands, almost like an emergency hospital situation, but it was not a hospital. I was seeing these vision in daytime, sitting awake, and people are being carried with great stress. Everybody's stressed and being carried away, and there is rush and fear and all that. So as my friend came, I told him that I have very strong feelings. Probably something will happen. I don't want to go to meet your parents this time again because I had postponed 3 times so far. Maybe some other time. He said, "What is it?" I said that I saw such things. Like I saw in my thoughts very vividly that people are being carried in stretchers. And in India, sometimes the railways, the trains fall off the track. And as trains carry a lot of people, usually big big deaths happen and injuries. So the closest I could actually guess was, I thought probably something will happen with our train. And he said, no, don't worry about it and all that. I'm still friends with that person and we regularly talk with him. Now he has wife and kids. He remembers this clearly. And I said, no, I don't want to go. And he said, nothing will happen. Come, it's just your thoughts. Did you dream? I said, no, it was coming as like very strong imagination that I could not dismiss. I could not remove it, get out of it. So we went, nothing happened on this because this is the day prior to the earthquake. We arrived to his house, lots of love and hospitality and all that. And I slept. Next morning, I was alone in the room, sleeping on a bed, and my bed was shaking really bad. And I thought my friend would not do such a thing. Very strange. When I opened my eye, there was earthquake very strong. Around 8:46 the morning. Earthquake, and then
You might want to get rid of your
the film also came out. It was
video for a second if you want to finish.
and
If
I
you
came back. Steve is the day. So parade happens in Delhi, or not in Delhi, but on TV, it's a big issue. Like they always show very nice programs, national level. So parade and all that was happening. The previous during the dinner, the father of my friend, the host, was telling me something about a famous Indian artist called Lata Mangeshkar. She's a female singer, lifelong. He said that. I said that she received Padma Bhushan. It's the highest civil award for any artist. Father said, I'm pretty sure she has not received it. And I said, I have strong feeling. I don't know where I read it or something. She has received it. So in the morning when they opened the TV, the live procession of the parade was there, and the government of India this morning actually awarded that highest civilian award to that artist, which I had a strong feeling the previous night. I was telling them and arguing, but I had no reference. Back in the days, we didn't refer to Google so quickly. I don't know if Google was there, but, and then also they started showing scenes of the injured and the dead from different parts of Gujarat. And exactly similar things that people are rushing, running, and being carried in stretchers, carried by two people on the two ends of stretcher. And my friend, he just explained everything to his family. He said he saw all these things yesterday, and it was just nothing bad happened to me or his family or that house, neither to the hostel where we live. For the following 10 nights, we had to sleep in the open field because the aftermath, they're like smaller earthquakes that actually destroy buildings. But thousands of people died, and in some places,
if you could just finish it up a second.
Structures were damaged.
Sorry
if it was morbid, but this was like a really huge one.
Yeah. Okay, well, let me just quickly go on and try to link it back with what we're talking about. I mean, the whole idea, thank you very much. The idea, he's going to go into a little bit later, is that the archetypes, he sort of describes what an archetype is, but the archetype also has a very strong emotional content, which is, is a very, it possesses us. So that's going to be an aspect of and if you live in an archetypal event, sometimes you can be drawn in. Visions start if you have something that's happening that is, time is. The Greeks said that future events throw their shadow ahead of them. There's an aspect that there's a shadow to future events that we can see. Well, does anyone else have a few comments? Go ahead, Jordi. You want?
Hello to everyone. I have about 3 video conferences at the same time, but I'll focus mainly on this one. I would like to make three I don't want to be distracting, 2, 3 small precisions. One, which I leave it here, is the difference between an archetype and an archetypal I image.
Mhm.
I relate to archetypal images, which are disturbing and there are notes of energy. Archetypes, to me, are less structure. And my dealings with archetypes will be better seen from somebody else's in a third position. But I don't want to be distracting. The second one, I was reading Murray Stein. Do you pronounce that way?
Yes, Murray Stein. Yeah.
Murray Stein. And at some point, but I don't have the quotation, I was looking on it, he distinguished the switch of the meaning of religion, I think it was Murray Stein, at Cicero's time or some sort of early Roman Republic, from rem legere to religare.
Mhm. Yes.
To understand the thing and to put together, which it has some such here.
Mhm.
And more to the point, to the starting, which I missed, presentation of today, on terms of personification, depersonification. I put a little note in the Facebook, which I think is important.
Yes.
The issue of God or divine.
Mhm.
Making a God a person,
Yes.
at best is problematic, at worst is blasphemy, to my understanding. And it's the basis of industrial religion, of all of them.
Mhm.
Now, the intuition of divine, I think, is built in all hardware. I don't want that to be distracting either here.
Mhm.
Generally speaking, I feel more comfortable, even honest, to leave the thing to the divine.
Mhm.
Divine as understood as a vector.
Yes. Well, it is now. The whole idea, though, with personifying the daemons. I mean, they're the only really. I mean, we'll talk about that, but I mean, we'll find out what he means by personifying. You know, he just Jung said that he used the term self when he wanted to use it was the Brahman self when he just wanted to describe a neutral word for the organizing archetype of the psyche, but he used the word God when he wanted there to be a moral or ethical obligation to follow up on images, or there's an ethical aspect to it, but you don't have to link it in with any particular deity. It is just considered, and I really don't know what it is. When I was at University of Iowa, they wanted to come up with a different word for God, and but anyway, yes, we'll find out more what he means by personification.
Can I,
Yeah, just a second, we can speak.
That has been mentioned several times at the chat.
Yes, the I Ching.
I have it at hand here.
Yes. Yeah, my brother, one time I was listening about the I Ching, and I go to Wisconsin, and he's sitting there in his University of Wisconsin. I said, "Have you ever heard of the I Ching?" And he reached under he's sitting on the book, and he says, "You mean this?" It's pretty coincidental. But anyway, how about Tim or Adam or Kevin or Marina or anybody? You have any? Oh, did you have one more point, Jordy? Oh, okay. Tim, do you have, or Charles or Adam?
I have something to say, but I think Kevin is.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would like
No.
Kevin to hear Kevin.
Yeah. Okay.
No, it's just a question. It would be nice to try to answer Gary's question. I mean, he has a really good question. I think his question was, Gary says, how do you personify this conflict of yours, or
How do you personify a conflict? Okay, well, how did Jacob, when he wrestled the angel, sometimes you just wrestle it. I think Tim had a dream about that one time, didn't you, Tim, about having to wrestle somebody or something?
Well, not so much a dream, but this story just became really prominent, and I began to realize that it really encapsulates every struggle I've ever had, where I feel like I'm Jacob and I'm trying to sort of slow walk my way into responsibility.
Yeah.
And I'm just on the edge of the river, you know, going to meet whatever fate is on the other side. And all of a sudden I get jumped by something that's trying to kill me. And I can't identify it, and I can't overpower it. I just have to submit to the struggle. And the struggle itself creates a kind of wounding that I carry for the rest of my life, but it also gives me a blessing. And I ended up doing, gosh, dozens of images. I did 6 sculptures, about 6 bronze sculptures about this struggle. And I could bring up a couple of images here. One, in each one, the struggle is very, very different, but it all has that same kind of drastic and earth-shaking monumentality to it. So, like, here's one called Seized by the Mystery. And here the angel has Jacob around the throat, and he's got a broken wing, and he's whispering something into the angel's ear, or to Jacob's ear. And that, you know, that little secret is something that I find just a really, really powerful image. What the hell is that secret? And another one, this one's called Seized by the Mystery. There's another one called By the Light of Morning. And it's a depiction of Jacob at the end of the evening, where the sun comes up and he realizes he's just been wrestling himself. See if I can find this one. But each one shows a different aspect of this struggle. There's one in which the angel has Jacob by the balls, and
ouch.
Yes, indeed, ouch. And this goes back to this ancient Hebrew tradition. Actually, it's probably not just Hebrew, but where the kings would make a treaty by holding each other by the scrotum to indicate that this is not only me who is agreeing to this thing, but for one thing, I've got you where it really matters, you know, where I could really hurt you if you defy me. And also, it has to do with, this is an agreement that not only applies to our generation, but to the next generations. And the title of this sculpture is Not My Seed, Yes, Your Everything. And I've very rarely exhibited it anywhere because it's so, it's hard for people to look at.
Could you put it up again, please? And Craig, Idris got bumped. If you could let him in, he's in the waiting room.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I see him.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find that photo.
Well, one thing while you're looking,
Yeah.
you know, often when you see an image in dreams and it is attacking you or chasing you, what you do is you turn around and you meet it, and then you ask it what it wants. And then usually that is a very healing experience. Go ahead. Oh, there we go.
So this is By the Light of Morning. And you can see he's got himself in kind of a headlock. And there's no angel to be seen.
So he's in a conflict with himself.
This is not my seed. Yes, you're everything. It's very hard to see because these are quite expressionistic sculptures. There's another angle of the same thing. But for me, just working on these images really helped me to understand what the whole genre of conflict is about. That a lot of it is mysterious, that you don't know how much of it is you and how much of it is the other person. You know, here's this confusion of limbs where it's very hard to see whose arm is where, you know, who's getting hurt, who's got their feet on the ground and who's up in the air, that sort of thing.
I think we're still seeing maybe by the light of morning. It
No,
may have
this
to
is
do,
not my seed not my seed, yes, you're everything.
because I haven't seen the images actually change. Maybe you have more than one screen or more than one.
There's the same one by a different angle.
Yeah, I didn't see any change there.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's changing, Tim. Yeah, maybe you could just exit out of it and put it back in again. Or just the one you were going to show.
Let me try it again. Sorry, this is.
Oh, that's okay.
Having a little bit of Zoom trouble here.
You know, one thing Heraclitus says that that Hillman mentions is that it's strife that creates the world. You know, that without confrontation, there is no world. You know, and that's the whole idea of the opposites. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah,
Wow.
And also I've also experimented with but the patina on different different versions of the same sculpture. So some of them are kind of greenish, some are brownish. And to me, that lends a different tone to my encounter with the piece.
I can imagine it looks different under different lighting too.
Right. Yeah.
It's a beautiful photographic rendering of it.
Oh,
too.
good.
Yeah, I love it. You did a very good job on that.
Yeah, can I just say that it looks as though it's something that I could meditate on?
Yes.
And it would definitely provide, you know, images would come out of that for sure for me.
Yeah. That is, it is. I agree with you, Marina. That is, I like the, and you know, timhomestudio.com, he has a lot of these images there. And Tim is a very psychological artist as well. I mean, he has a lot of and I think that's why he's, you know, interested in
Yeah.
dreams and Jung. How about you, Adam? Did you have a comment or you were going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I super appreciate what Tim just shared. So, and I agree with what Marina just said. What I was gonna say was like also responding to Gary, and it's way less dramatic and interesting than most of what's been said, but very simple. Like the other day, I was feeling like a piece of garbage in the corner. So I was like, I really need to work with this, you know. So I decided to listen to what the piece of garbage was saying. And that was like an act of imagination, you know. So maybe I'm just relating this to Gary's question about, you know, how do you personify a feeling? Sometimes, at least for me, the feeling is like, the feeling comes with an image, like, well, what does that feel like? Like, I feel like something, you know, and then if I can talk to that, that can be a way to engage with it. It was helpful for me.
That
May I
is
say something?
exactly what personifying is. I mean, it's part of art therapy too. Pardon me? If you draw an image of a feeling or something and you put it away, that's really what we're going to be talking about here, about ensouling something. This one
I
is.
came across this quotation that can you hear me?
Try to keep it short, Idris, a little
Yeah.
bit, because we've got a lot of people. But go ahead. But I mean,
I
we
like
have
to write
to make room for everyone.
I will keep in mind. I'll keep in mind. I like to write poetry. For me, the distinction of words is very important. So the difference between opposition and conflict, or difference of opinion. So there is a certain quote where somebody said that my followers, for them, difference of opinion is a blessing. And then I found that scholars wrote about it, that opposition is something bad, where whatever you decide, somebody would just oppose you all the time. While when there is like conflict, it's healthy because people correct each other. And then that difference of opinion that's in a conflict, it makes both healthy. So in sibling rivalry, sometimes like that, somebody would correct one all the time. That's very healthy for health of both. But sometimes there is some animosity where in conflict people always oppose each other. So I see this conflict as life affirming, something good.
Yes, that's it. It can be. I mean, of course, this is what the whole idea of dialogue is that it's a vis-a-vis. There has to be another one to create the third. And and in alchemy, they say the only way you can unite two things is to separate them first. So there's always this sense of the separates that need to unite. You have to separate them first. Rena, did you, or Charles, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I guess I'll throw my 2 cents in there. I've been trying to kind of remember what I was going to say while listening to everyone else at the same time. So you were speaking earlier about that I think this is kind of what it was, that the different archetypes need, or different areas of the psyche or whatever, need this kind of manifestation or personalization and attention and life, and that there's just no, at least in my life, there tends to be this lack of symbolic personification to the different areas of life and the psyche. And then I was listening to you and I was just thinking to myself, there's no way on earth that I could possibly get through this in any sort of literal thinking. And that just the literal approach, which I am prone to, and I guess in the West we are to a degree. And I'm just thinking to myself, it's such a dead end, and it's just so fruitless. And in the pathology created by the lack of personifications of different areas of life in the psyche, just these different autonomous things not getting the right amount of attention and personalization and relation. And and I was just thinking to myself, felt like that I was freaking being diagnosed there, and it just clicked to me so strongly, the cause of pathology. I guess in this particular case that I'm speaking of, being caused by just this lack of personification and therefore lack of relation. And, the idea of ancient peoples having these myths where, everything's personified. Everything can be, everything within can just be lived so much more easily. And that was the kind of life that was more, I guess, normalized, you could argue. And just this kind of dawning that I am in serious trouble if I'm going to go about my life in any sort of literal sense. It's just so limited in its capacity for wholeness, for lack of a better word. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
It's kind of a protection too. I mean, the whole idea of personifying things is to take, it's somewhat like the neti, not this, not this. I am not that, I'm not that. And if you can personify all these things that are plaguing you, any of these conflicts, these some aspect of yourself that is troublesome, some feeling that's very dragging you down, or some depression or whatever, if you can personify it, give it a name, have a dialogue with it, then you have been removed from that situation. So now it isn't so debilitating, because the one that is talking to your own depression is not the one that's depressed anymore. If you can manage it. I'm not saying it's easy to do, but if you can give your depression a name, like my depression is named Eeyore, and I'm going to talk to Eeyore and ask Eeyore, why are you so depressed? And so the idea of this active imagination, this dialogue, this personification, is to become your own analyst. And this chapter is so rich. I just wish maybe Jan can remember where he says that you can become your own analyst when you start doing personifications. And analysis is personifying an image. The idea of therapy is to personify images, to have a dialogue with them. And the whole idea is, the more of these feelings, these energies that just tie you up in knots, that you can put over here, give a name and talk with, then that is liberating, revivifying, and freeing to you, and now you can there's a differentiation. So now you've done an alchemical separation of you and this horrible feeling that you have, and now you're talking to it and asking what it's about. You maybe draw a picture of it or whatever, and of course it often is just what you need, but you don't know it, and so anyway, this is the richness, I think, that we're going to get from this book. Go ahead, Kevin.
Add something very quick. It was a very important subject. This is also what I get from this book. It's called Origin and the History of Consciousness by Eric Newman. Mm-hmm. And here he talks about, obviously, symbolism, but I also feel like there is already the psyche. When I say psyche, I mean not as a soul image, as Hillman used it, more as a Jung, like psyche as, an image of totality. It already personified images in dreams. Let's say the divine couple, which is quite prominent in dream, the king and the queen, which is essentially, I would say it's a symbol, but it's also a personification of the masculine and the feminine energy, and so I think that's already inherent in in the psyche as such. I think the interpretation what people make is what is lacking, not essentially what the psyche is showing. So it's already inherent in the subject and outside the subject. You know what, like Newman says, what can be better symbol of the divine opposites than the royal king and the, you know, the royal couple? I mean, there is none. I mean, people can use many years try to find one. They won't find one.
Yeah, well, it is. That's, I think, the whole. He says, Hillman says, the whole book is attempt to discuss and vivify soul, insouling, and insouling is through a mode of apprehension that recognizes that there's nothing more primary than the image, and that psyche, soul, and image are all one. And then the idea of the personification here is again to be well, you know, he mentions Plotinus in here, and Plotinus is this he says was the best of all the Greek philosophers on what polytheism and soul really meant, you know. And Plotinus had this image of that means you are like a chorus grouped around a conductor who allow our attention to be distracted by the audience or what is occurring behind us. It is only by turning back to the conductor that we can sing as we should sing. In this song or dance, one looks upon the source of life, the origin of being, the root of the soul, and the cause of the good. But again, I think the idea that we're trying to get along here. Let's just go back to our active imaginations, our inner work. Everybody here that's doing inner work. I mean, to me, the value of what we've discussed so far is that that I if you want to be your own analyst and you have anxieties in your heart, or you have something that is making you nervous or upset, you need to give it a name and you need to talk to it. And as soon as you do that, you're going to feel a release. You know, you're going to feel a release, because now this thing that is seizing you, and this, you know, when he brings up archetypes, that's what he's saying, is that they have an emotional content which seizes you, and that means it really turns you into stiffness. If you can take it and make it more, you can talk with it, personify it, and outside. Now suddenly this mode of apprehension now has been removed from this aspect, which makes you stiff, and so you can't. You can't navigate or operate, but you can navigate and operate it if you can talk with it. And it's over here, and it's part of one of these people who are grouped around the conductor. Amongst you are one of these, you know, that are grouped around. You're not really the conductor yourself, you know. But anyway, does anybody else have any more comments? And I could do a little bit more, and I don't want to spend too much time, but I would like to finish up the first chapter next time and try to encapsulate it a little better. Go ahead.
Good God, there's so much going on in the chat. It's so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to have all these conversations at once, but Jen was talking about,
sure. Yes.
different ways of talking about these, you know, personification and animism and anthropomorphism. Everything that we talk about in the inner realm has to be a metaphor. And it occurs to me that because we are embodied creatures, it is only through bodily experience that we can manifest what's going on either inside or outside. And so everything comes back to sort of the sensibility of the body, that the body becomes the antenna that not only takes in information from the world, but also creates the broadcast that allows us to communicate with each other. So everything has this kind of fragrance of embodiment. And I think that makes up a great deal of our intelligence, that we tend to think of, especially words and discourse, as being this mental process, but so much of it is just rooted in the flesh. I think that this is what the lack of soul, and particularly the lack of anima, is about, is trying to reclaim this idea that we are rooted in our bodies, and our bodies are the sacred ground from which everything else sprouts.
But our body has a song to it. You know, there is a song in our bodies, and having our feet on the ground, being in the veil of soul making is very fun. And that's what he's saying is so fundamentally human about personalizing the images. It's just fundamentally human, you know, because it's creating a relationship which has the aspect of love and brooding and incubating, and the fact that we're living in it. Did you have something to say, Marina?
I just wanted to say, like, you know, I like the idea of soul making, but there's a part of me that thinks the soul is there. We're soul finding.
Yes.
Yeah, that's that.
But yeah, the soul is there all the time. And if you ever read anything about alchemy, its main complaint is that we're ignoring it, and that we're not paying attention to it, you know, and it will cry out to us that if we will pay attention to it, it will give into our hands the morning star. So this is a voice that someone heard, you know. I mean, it was the complaint of the soul. And again, it is this image, it is this autonomous being within ourselves that is independent of the events that occur with us. And it is also the mediator and to life, but it's the principle of life itself. And it's related to love, to the brooding of images, to the creating of images. It's called the maker of images. And it also is has an aspect that it is transcends death, you know, and it also has an immanence in it that means that it has it is the divine aspect of ourselves, you know, that it is radiant. The divine shows through the soul. But so soul making is basically you're moving the center of awareness of consciousness away from the ego and the willfulness and more into this polytheistic realm of images where it's revivifies our life, you know. So in this, and so what his Hillman's main complaint is literalism, is taking the power out of words, and saying that there's the only ensouled thing is the ego. You know, the soul is not separate from the ego. For every one body, there's one soul. And where what Hillman is saying, that no, there's all kinds of divine energy within you, you know, and you can speak to many, many, many of them. And this is what he is saying is a tradition that we need to rediscover. And he says, not by choice, but by necessity. And this is what alchemy was about, and what the Romantic period was discussed. The Renaissance was a rediscovery of a world filled with soul. Is anybody else? How about Rena? Did you have any comments on this book or not?
Today I'm here as a student, Craig.
Oh,
so I'm
okay.
only here to absorb.
Okay. Okay. Well, anyway, you know, another thing Hillman says is that the soul, the psyche, and the images are a poetic basis of mind. You know, they don't have anything to do with brain, physiology, the structure of language, the organization of society, the analysis of behavior. That is where he gives this quote from Heraclitus: "You could not discover the limits of soul, even if you traveled every road to do so, such as the depths of its logos, or its meaning." You know, so soul equals depth. And the only way to reach soul is to travel downward, you know. So psychology then it constructs vessels and then breaks them in order to move deeper and to intensify the experience. Now, here's the other aspect, is that when he says creates vessels, you create receptacles. That's what the personifying is you create receptacles for these various energies, you know, and then you discuss with them. Some of them you need to do away with, you know, some of these horrible feelings, or transform it. And remember, metaphor means means it's not allegory. You know, it means to create a third thing, a symbol, and the symbol is something that didn't exist before, and it was not created by us or by the soul, but by the dialogue with it. So the soul making is really creating creating meaning, or creating symbol, and it's myth making. You know, making. Go ahead.
And yeah, it's just my thoughts. Like, I was thinking, I feel like Hillman, he spent a lot more time on the feminine of the divine couple, of the divine royal couple. He spent more time on the divine feminine. Whereas I feel like more for Jung, he spent somewhat, I mean, they speak about both, but I feel like Jung was somewhat more lenient towards the king, if you like. So I don't know, this is the impression I have of Hillman, because like you said, he's like a jazz, you know, the soul. But nevertheless, you know, if we just spend, or at least if it's whole psychology, if it's whole archetypal psychology, which I don't know, like I haven't read enough of him to tell, but I just, from the small reading I have, is about soul making, then I would feel that he is spending perhaps as a compensation a lot on the queen of the divine couple. So rather than spending time on the electrifying king upwards movement, then he is, I know Jung takes a deep dive as well, but I'm just saying, like, this is what I feel about Hillman. So I never saw archetypal, at least psychology, as a new movement from Carl Jung. So that's why it confuses me to have made archetypal psychology for that very reason, as something, a new movement, which I cannot see, like, in my readings, how it could be.
Well, you know, he mentions that Freud's work was more related to the father, where this is Hillman, and Jung's work was more related to the mother and to the feminine, and that in his later life he wrote about Mary and Sophia, and Freud's early and main pupils were men. Jung invented the great mother, wrote only one minor paper on the father, but major ones, and repeatedly on the mother and the enema. his early and chief pupils were women. Jung's animism is his personification is tightly and tied to the notion of anima, which is the word he uses for one's personal and personified soul image. And so anyway, and this was something that von Franz said about Jung too, is that he was the son of the
Yeah, that's the thing. Like
mother,
when
and where Freud was the son of the father.
I mean, when I said what I said, I also thought about what you're saying right now. But I feel like Jung managed to marry the East and the West. We have the Indian, all of this philosophy from Indian, the image of Purushma, Atma, and all of this. But the thing is that the way Jung approach the unconscious is a lot of it also by logos. The book, pretty much one of his most famous book, is Psychological Types, which is dissecting the ego awareness into 8 cognitive function, and that in itself was a masterpiece, and that in a sense was his tools to dig into his unconscious. There was a point where he had to let that go as well, but I feel like what I read from Hillman is that he wants somewhat. I haven't read much Hillman, so it's just for discussion's sake. I feel like he wants to make the dream image stay in the below rather than sort of dragging up into the ego world of logos. And so that's what I mean when I feel like Hillman stays with the feminine rather than more with the masculine.
Yeah, well, it is, Jung, Hillman mentions that when Jung's first dream after he broke up with Freud, I don't know if it was his first dream, but Hillman said, these are in the notes, by the way, which are pretty good. If you notice, he had like 100 and some notes on that first chapter, and they're not accessible. You can't go look at them very well. You have to read them after you're done with the book, unless you have them separately. But what the dream was, and we mentioned this before, where Jung is seated at a almost like a Greek temple, and this at a green table that reminded him of the emerald tablets, and a dove flies in, and then the dove turns into a little girl who goes and plays with his children, and then comes back and puts his arm around its neck, and then turns back to the dove and tells him that I can only come here when the male dove is busy with the 12 dead, And so what he saw from that was the aspect of the saving power of the soul, that what he needed, what was going to bring him out of this deep depression that he had following losing all these relationships he had with his colleagues after Freud basically shunned him, is the soul. The soul was going to be the liberating aspect of him. And I think this is what moved him. I think almost, I don't know if it was consciously or unconsciously, to descend into the depths and to bring the images up from there. And he has in the Red Book, he describes in the notes where he just drops down, into the depths. But I mean, the whole idea, I think, in this whole thing and on the personification, and we're going to go through the other chapters, and I'll try to do a little better summarization on, and maybe Jan can help too, on the first chapter, because it's so dense. I mean, I took like 20 pages of notes, but I think I need to condense them a little bit. But is the saving and liberating aspect of personification. If we want to free our hearts from being all seized up and just just this feeling of frozenness, the way we do it is through liberating it through whatever, to try to find what is making my heart feel like this, and then to give it a name, and then to have a dialogue with it, and to have other and to create an image for it, you know. But go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, I was just going to say this may be way off, but I'm discovering in my own process and from other things I've discussed with other people that maybe when one suddenly starts to be confronting some of this stuff within oneself, maybe the first step is to like have to, at least maybe, I don't know, for men, maybe for women too, I don't know, is maybe to have to work with some of the feminine stuff in terms of like remothering of oneself, like readjusting that relationship with like the nurturing perhaps that one didn't receive in that regard. So I feel like I'm in that process, but then I think that maybe from what I've heard that then you can start also working with the refathering part, but I'm not sure if that maybe comes afterwards and if that's related to what Hellman's thing is. Maybe he was just doing one of those things. I'm not sure.
Be dealing with your grief if you have any grief. And Hillman also says that this mother, this father, this brother, this sister that we're dealing with are also archetypes. Don't you want to personify them, but not as your historical or literal fathers. If you take them in, or mothers, you make them the literal mother, literal father, then you can't have it's not an ensouled dialogue. But you could ask them about your literal parents. You ask this great mother in you about here were some aspects of my mothering that I wanted to speak about, or my fathering, or the problems I've had. I really did this with the anima, I mean, I had to go all the way back to I was like 13 years old to really make peace with the anima, and I had to go back and talk about one girl who had a very painful experience with, but anyway, well, we only got about 10 minutes left. Does anybody want to talk, like Roy or Lewis or Jordy or Matt or Maggie or Miles? Anybody that hasn't said anything? Yeah, go ahead.
It is one thing that is interesting is that the only time that we ever experience the body and the ego is in the here and now, in the eternal present.
Yes.
We don't experience in the past, and we don't experience in the future. And they are the only reasons why, as embodied humans, we have any cognition of both the outside world and what we like to call the inner spiritual world. And I would like to not dismiss literalism entirely, because concrete matter is what our bodies are made of, literally. And it represents the very essence of the feminine principle, whose role it is eternally to give form to the soul. And in the Western world, it's important to remember that Christ was born in the flesh, and that the Holy Ghost was left behind as the Paraclete to be formed, not to be formed, but to be born within living human bodies, which to me is the secret of the expression to be born again. And it's my view that we don't need to wait until death to be reborn, that it's through the actions of our individual lives within time and space that we use, as Dr. Jung wrote, the ego is the workshop in which the self is to be born. And I think one of the glories of having a literal body that's alive is that we can give birth to a resurrected body in the flesh while living, which at the time of death will continue living, that will be present not only in, it can manifest itself going into the fourth dimension.
I find, one of my real big problems was embodying myself, becoming embodied, having my feet on the ground and feeling this gravity. I'd have these dreams where I'm up in space and I'd have my feet amputated and cryogenically frozen. And then the anima would tell me, it's not so easy to reattach those, she was telling me this. And I also, since I've been doing this, don't you feel that each part of your body has a little bit of a song, a little bit of consciousness in it? Your feet, your legs. My wife has fibromyalgia, and she's always drawing pictures of what it's like to have fibromyalgia. Roy, I think you are just about ready to say something. But go ahead, Louis.
I was going to say that I agree with you that the human body, that every cell has a function. This is one of the heresies of what's known as brain psychology, where all you ever see is the brain, and it's treated as the epiphenomenon of the human soul and of consciousness. And I don't doubt that the brain is essential. It's an important transmitter of information, but so is the heart and the lung and the liver and the kidneys. And to view the brain as being the essence of everything is akin to listening to a broadcast that you don't like on the radio and grabbing your shotgun and going out and shooting the radio antenna. Well, yes, you can destroy the antenna, but the message keeps on coming. And that's the same with the brain and the other organisms. They are essentially transmitters, whereas it is the soul that is giving the broadcast and is the broadcast itself. And for all this brain psychology related material, for all that it does not give itself life. That is the province of the human soul and the soul in general for everything that lives.
I've felt that sometimes if I haven't eaten a good meal for a while and I have a good meal, that every cell in my body sings when that food goes into me. Roy, were you going to say something? Okay, I can't hear you, but are you talking? Well, I think, Roy, you're going to have to either get a better microphone or just say it in the chat if you could. For some reason, your voice isn't coming through. I'm sorry. Okay. Well, anyway, try to find out. Test your microphone. I think that when you plug it in, you have to answer some question on the thing. Well, how about does Jordy and Matt and anybody else have a few closing comments here? We don't have much time, but go ahead.
Well, just one thing I'd kind of like to throw out to the group is, I think this is like probably one of the most important things that we've looked at, easily up there with active imagination.
Yes.
I would suggest to the group as a whole that we actually do an exercise and maybe bring it back for some discussion. And what the exercise is to personify something that, an event that happens in your life this next week or whatever. And then, be ready to give like a short description of how you personified it and what the personification is. I think that would be really interesting. And if
yes,
we share this, then that's going to help everyone in doing this work.
And knowing what it is, and we'll try to sum it up a little better too. What he means. I think if we give it another week of incubation, I think we'll know more. But but this is a very, very, very important chapter. And so, yes, if we could do that. Does Jordy or Matt have anything to say at the end here?
But I
or
just wanted
anybody
to
else?
say,
Yeah.
looks like Roy just asked if you were doing the dream group on Monday.
Yes, yes, we will. It's at 7 p.m. Chicago. And I tell you, I absolutely, anyway, you know, doing real material, and this is what Gary said before, if you do active imaginations on authentic productions of the psyche, it's always more meaningful. Well, how about George? Yeah, go ahead. Somebody say something.
So the benefit of this sharing this vision, I would like to ask if you could give me a feedback what I can do now, or in another situation, if a similar thing happens, what could I have done to better the experience if one has such a big vision, and
Well,
and also for the betterment of my soul. So we are on Earth experiencing this.
Yeah, Idris, that vision you had was almost like I would say a paranormal vision of a future event. Okay, so it was almost like you just saw something in the future, and it was because there was something percolating somewhere. So this is not, even though it was a very powerful vision. I'm not sure unless we discussed it, and you can just, if you come to our dream group too, or even you can set up a time with just me. Yeah, you can do, it's 7 p.m. Chicago time on Monday. And if that's not a good time for you, maybe you and I can talk just one-on-one at some point. But what I'd like to know from you is a little bit more, because about the differences between having a vision of something that's an event that's about to occur, and a vision that's going to have something to do with soul making. I don't know if they're the same thing, but why don't we set something up, Idris? Either you come Monday or I can talk with you individually. How about you, Jordy or Matt?
Or maybe Maggie unmuted or something.
I'll send you my email too, Idris.
Actually, I'm new to the group and I joined late. Hi guys, and this is my first time here. I'm not a practitioner myself, but have gone through like half year or a little bit more than a half year of psychology analysis by a Jungian psychologist, and quite impressed by the organic transformation that happened with the dream analysis and stuff like that, and that gets me started in reading a bit more about C.G. Jung's books and his theory. So I'm quite foreign to humans' archetypal psychology, which I'm just reading about it now. And I would really like to learn more about it, since I'm a bit interested in how is it being differentiated from C.G. Jung's individuations. Since I am reading online that what it says, the excerpt is human has also rejected individuation, which is, in my understanding, is central to Jungian psychology. This might be a bit beyond what we were discussing here. And I would really love to be joining at the other study group as well, so could learn some more from you guys, the experienced practitioner, more about a Jungian, and I could do more self-analysis, as you say.
Yeah, well, I would say that Hillman, before 1980, when he kind of started to become a social cultural commentator, that's probably not fair, but before 1980, you know, he was the director of studies of the Jung Institute for quite a while. He was a very supplemental to Jung. I think after that is when some people said that he started to become a little feral, you know.
Just a quick comment on that.
Yeah.
So for individuation, that's the self, and it's kind of monotheistic. Whereas doing soul work is, many daemons, and so it's polytheistic. So in one, you have, you're made up of many, and the self is monotheistic.
It's a little, he'll go more into this as we go through the difference between spirit and soul and self and all that. Matt, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you very much. I was listening. I'm first time in this group, and it was very inspiring for me. I work as art therapist, and I work with kind of like drawing different images, and I work with my dreams. So I really, it was very inspiring for me to listen to what you have to say, everybody, about that. And I am actually listening from Poland, so I live in Poland.
Oh, yes.
And thank you very much for this. It was very inspiring for me. So I didn't say anything, but I was listening.
Okay, well, great. Well, next time we'll try to sum up the personalization, and if everybody could do an exercise like Gary said, maybe with maybe 15, 20 minutes of automatic writing, and Gary kind of described that where you write something and then you try to pivot and become the other side and answer the question on. In other words, that's the person that is going to personify whatever image or whatever feeling that you want to personify. So how about you, Jordy? You get the very, very last word. And Idris, I will be in touch with you on email, and you can either come to our dream group or maybe it would be best if you and I had a one-on-one, and I will do that. But I'll send you my link and we'll set up a time. Pardon me? Yeah.
I'll need to review the whole session, and I look forward to access the video in the YouTube channel and go thoroughly through the chat as well. Otherwise, I have to say thank you to all of the present and the one who had contributed one way or another to all that. By the way, I would like to have one-on-one for 10 minutes with you at some point.
Yes, perfect. Why don't we just set that up? It might not be today, but anytime next week. And let me just, I was going to say one thing. Oh, yeah. If Matt or Maggie or anyone who does, or Idris, who does not have a copy of the book Revisioning Psychology, pardon me?
Yeah, I don't have it yet. I don't have it yet.
Yes, I'm going to put my email here in the chat, or you can put your email in the chat, might be better.
Sure.
And I will put you on our emailing list, and that way you'll get, I'll get you a PDF of it.
Thank you.
Yes, and I'm just saying, like Gary is saying, this is a very important book. Geez, I don't know what.
Would that be too advanced for me to read? Since I just read a bit about dreams.
Yes,
one or two books on
maybe
CGO.
it would be. You can give it a try, but yeah,
I will try.
I'm not saying it's easy. I mean, Gary. Well, yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, I've read it about 4 times, and I think if I read it one more time, I'm going to be able to summarize it a little better. And Jan, you're great at a first reading. You are fabulous. I mean, the way you bring these things back up. But next time we'll do a little bit more of a summary on it. And if you guys could put your email, Matt or Maggie or anybody else that does not have a copy of the book, Roy, I think you've got one, or Idris, if you send me your, I have your email address, and I'll set up a time with both you and Jordy next week. So anyway, next week, hopefully, let's see if you can do a personification of something.
Thank you.
In other words, give it a name, talk with it, ask it why it is this way and not that way, and maybe why is it plaguing you, or why it is not plaguing you, or like I did an active imagination or personification with the fact that my active imaginations were so boring, you know. So then I wanted to talk to the God of boring active imaginations. And I asked him, why are you sending me why are you so boring? Why don't you send me some images, you know?
Right.
And so, go ahead. Somebody say something.
I
Okay,
just wanted to mention, just as a cautionary warning, that since this is being broadcast on YouTube,
yeah,
persons may want to be somewhat hesitant about sharing their emails.
Oh,
well, not the
okay.
chat
Yeah,
side.
the chat
but
won't show up on,
the chat
on
won't show up.
YouTube.
That is fine among us, but you know, not everybody is psychologically balanced out there. So
Yeah. Well, the
Also, I don't
chat
think
is
the
not going to show
Zoom
up on YouTube.
info will show up on the YouTube
No,
either.
it's not.
So,
And if we ever want to have some personal discussions too, I will just ask and I'll turn off the YouTube too. So anyway,
Thank you.
Yes.
I
So,
also wanted to ask Maggie, if you are,
sure.
you know, pretty new to this, have you read Man and His Symbols by Carl Jung? Because it
Yes,
is
I read a bit about
okay,
it, and
okay.
I have a thick book of basic writings of C.G. Jung with me, which I
Okay.
am not even 1/3 there.
I just wanted to say, Man and His Symbols is really good because it was written specifically for that purpose of like, it's kind of like it was meant to be an introductory kind of work to like get his ideas out to the average person. So I recommend it.
Yeah, I have it. Thank you. I have read it.
Maggie, do you mind if I just say, just for curiosity, what region are you from?
I'm in Hong Kong now.
Oh, in Hong Kong now. Okay.
So we are Hong Kong, which is part of China.
Yes.
And we are in Asia now. So it's midnight, 12:42, which is okay because tomorrow is no work for me. It's just excellent time. Instead of reading or playing video games or watching TV, this is just excellent because I have always been fascinated about C.G. Jung, and you know, and with my work with the analysis is, I think, halfway, because my understanding of Jung's psychology in growing a person's individuation is a lifelong journey.
Yes.
So I'm pretty sure I'm just, you know, just getting started, and with the analysis, the psychologist's help, I have been able to understand a bit more of the dreams that I have been having, and some symbols, and writing dream journals, and doing some artworks myself. I play piano, but mostly I just play classical music. So it's just reading some famous composers' work. So it's not really like original. So because of the suggestion from the psychologist, I started to sculpt a bit before and draw, even though I'm not an artist myself. But yeah, and it's a very interesting discovery of what kind of things are inside that I have been not able to more conscious about. It feels like I'm like sleepwalking. Yeah.
Well, I just asked because you have such a you are so fluent in English. It's amazing.
Oh, thank you. Actually, you know, we were a bit of politics. We were actually British colony before until 1997. And it has been a political protest ongoing last year and made some really huge headlines, in case you guys watch some news. And lately there's a new law imposed on Hong Kong by China that is under a lot of controversy. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll try. You sound fairly calm, so I'm going to hope that everything's calm. But anyway, also I want to mention,
besides the COVID, you know, I'm having more depression.
Yes, everything.
Over COVID.
This is 2020 is a kind of a train wreck, but
it's a weird year. Like everybody got locked down. Yeah. So, but I think it's excellent time for some introspection of ourselves and getting reconnected with ourselves, our souls, and our family. Refocusing what's important in life rather than just activities outside. So I think this is an excellent time to do so.
Yes. And I want to mention, if anyone can't attend our dream group, but they'd like to discuss a dream, if you just email it to me personally, I will discuss it with you one-on-one. Not that I'm the greatest, but I mean, I actually just amplified, you know, over like maybe a 20-year period, several thousand dreams. And, you know, so I kind of have a feel for it, but you know, and it's something that I think Charles mentions and stuff, that it's painful, but if you do it long enough and work on it long enough, it suddenly opens like a flower, you know. But it takes a lot of attention to have
Yeah,
that happen.
it's very exhausting and requires a lot of energy.
But don't you think the end product is worth it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that drawing it out is exhausting. It is. And because you don't really know where you're going, and you just keep going, and pretty soon the more attention you give it, though, the more it starts to speak to us, you know. And because it speaks a weird language.
It's often like these dreams, they seem like a lump of coal, but then when you go over them, you realize it's really a precious gem.
Yes,
underneath.
Definitely. Okay, well, next time we will have a meeting, and I'll set up something with Jordy and Idris, and I'm going to email out the book to Matt and Maggie, if you'll just
thanks.
Yeah,
Thank
and don't
you.
worry about putting your email in the chat, because no one will see that but us.
I will need a copy of the book too. If you...
Who is that? Oh, Idris, or who needs a copy?
Yes, me.
Yes, Idris. I will send you a copy. I have your email address, so I will include you on it. On the send it out.
I also send you my phone number in case you want to text me.
Okay, sure. It's probably best for me on
for
Zoom.
some occasions.
It's best, yeah. But I'll set something up with you too, Jordy. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well,
just a question. Last question. Sorry. I just wonder if there will be a new Zoom link for the next meeting.
It should be the same one every time.
The same. Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So it will be
I mean, I will send it out.
Okay.
I'll send it
yes,
out.
Please, thank you. Because the time difference, I need to calculate the time and remind myself in the calendar. Like today, I missed it totally, and until it started already.
Yeah.
So
well, yes, definitely. I send a link out every time, but it's always the same link. So I'm not very security conscious. Okay, well, next time, hopefully, if you guys can do any personification work and come back with a little bit of a story about that. I think Gary really likes to have us do a little inner work that we can, you know, that fits in with the reading a little bit.
Craig?
Does it have to be current? And is it okay on personification of archetypes? I did before. No. Oh, okay. Yes. So it has to personification of something. Yes, on the animals, the archetypes.
Well, anything. Maybe like, let's say you're very angry at someone, or let's say that you know, you have a dream figure in a dream who's very puzzling to you. You know, why don't you have a talk with that dream figure? I mean, there's like I might have a talk with I don't know what I'm going to do about that dog that goes in the mud, but Louis, what were you going to say? And by the way, when we do the personifications, I'll turn YouTube off. So go ahead, Louis.
Regarding the personification of these things, one suggestion for the future, as you know, in the Red Book, Dr. Jung composes a long incantation regarding the incubation of the egg.
Yes.
He writes that it is a chant done in the style of the ancients. What would be really good is if we could find someone knowledgeable about music and chanting. And if that chant could be put to music,
I hear Adam's
Chanting in
name
my
being called out.
that would be quite interesting in reading the Red Book, instead of just reading it as a narrative, to read that incantation in the form of a chant.
Well, Adam is a music composer, aren't you, Adam? I mean, you do a lot of composition.
I see.
Yeah, yeah. If somebody
well,
shares that with me.
Yeah, why
like to
don't you
look at that.
send that to us, Lewis, and let's see if Adam can come up with anything, because he's done some wonderful.
Give me just a moment, and I'll have a link real quick.
Okay,
Like-
or just email it to us. My wife is over here wanting me to go on a walk with her, so.
Okay. Thank
So,
you for today.
Yes, and I will send out something, and I will send out the entire chat to everyone as well.
Thanks.
So, because
Thank you.
It was a
That,
very
that
good
will
chat.
help
And
because
thank you,
chat has
Jan,
such
especially. Yes,
yeah, valuable information.
definitely.
Yes, I'm learning.
Okay, well, we'll
Right.
talk to you all
See
next time,
everyone.
and hopefully we'll be a little more organized on summarizing the first chapter. I think I'll have a better
Okay.
handle on it. Okay, and
Thanks,
thank you,
everybody.
Roy, for at least
Bye-bye.
being here. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
See you
Stay
later.
safe, guys. You guys are in the States, right? Stay
You
safe.
too.
Bye bye, everyone.
Have a
All of
good
us.
day.
Okay,
Okay.
you too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Lois, by the way.
Thank you. Bye.